the ACC has settled with Florida State and Clemson. Now, I want to bring up the real big details of this for a minute because I talked about this yesterday, but before yesterday, the exit fee to leave the ACC was $120 million. But they also controlled all your media rights through 2036, which was the big deal. Now the exit fee is at $165 million, but it drops $18 million a year, and the exit fee is all you have to pay to keep your media rights intact. So how inevitable does this make it that the top teams are about to bolt the ACC for the SEC or Big Ten?
I think they're going to leave. I think that Florida State and Clemson are going to depart the ACC. Now, the ACC has, 17 teams right now?
18.
18? Okay, I thought they had an odd number. All right.
Well, technically Notre Dame's an affiliate, so I guess 17. You're right.
Stanford and California, that's really an interesting match with that. The thing that's intriguing about this is with Clemson and Florida State, the rich get richer. So would Clemson and Florida State look at this and say, no, wait a minute, we're succeeding. We're getting into the college football playoff. We're getting more viewerships. We're getting more money. We're in better position with more finances in our back pocket to win the ACC and get a college football playoff bid than butting our heads against the Big Ten and the SEC. Would they potentially look at it like that? That now they're better equipped to win their own conference, so why get into the meat grinder that is the SEC and the Big Ten?
So you think with this new brand initiative where they can take home more money based on ratings, they might actually see greater value in staying in the ACC?
Yes, I think that's possible. Mm-hmm.
I could see that. I took an opposite approach yesterday, and I want to know what you think about this. One of the underrated things, I don't know if you know this, but Georgia Tech was the highest rated ACC team in football last year. And SMU was number
viewership rating.
Viewership rating, yeah. Okay. SMU was number 3. The reason I bring that up is if this brand initiative were in place, Georgia Tech would have gotten the most money last year from the ACC of anybody. And are we so sure? Because Florida State and Clemson wanted this. They wanted the leverage to be able to leave if they wanted to. Are we so sure that by the time Florida State and Clemson want to leave, that they'll be the most desirable ACC team or ACC teams for the SEC or the Big Ten to poach?
I think that the answer to that is likely, but it's no guarantee, is it? Miami could certainly surpass both of them.
They could.
Miami's not won an ACC title yet. Now, they got a really good program right now, but they've not won the ACC. North Carolina hadn't won the ACC since 1980. It's been a minute. So I think it's possible that those two teams – well, here's the thing, too, about that. How long is Dabo Swinney going to coach at Clemson? How long does he want to hang around at Clemson? And Mike Norvell at Florida State, they went from undefeated and arguably should have been in the college football playoff to a miserable season. It started with the bowl game in which a lot of the players didn't play. So how quickly will Florida State bounce back from that? I don't know. I do have a question for you, and I don't know the answer. You mentioned Georgia Tech. I thought the success was not just viewership, but also success on the field. Is that not correct? As far as the money?
I do believe success on the field is part of it. I need to fully read the details. But isn't it like success on the field is part of an agreement to certain primetime games you're going to get? I could be wrong on that. And that's where the brand initiative comes into play.
I thought you got more money if you won the ACC, and I thought you got more money if you played for the ACC championship and if you got in the college football playoff.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right about that. Well, there's automatic, yeah, because you generate money for the conference with the college football playoff, so you probably get a percentage of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, the reason but, we talk about drawing viewership. Let's be honest. I think Bill Belichick in North Carolina, at least for a couple of years, is going to draw more ratings than Florida State or Clemson is, honestly, TV-wise.
That's a good point, as long as they're competitive. If they come out of the blocks and start getting beat 40-0, then people are going to – I don't think people will watch that. But if they're competitive and if they're playing really well against the Clemsons and Miamis and the other teams in the league, kind of like Georgia Tech. You mentioned Georgia Tech with the viewership. Georgia Tech had a couple of big upsets, right, during the season. And I think they also – didn't they play Notre Dame?
Yes, I believe they did, yeah.
and that's going to get eyeballs on your game. Anybody that plays Notre Dame is going to get some eyeballs. So I think if North Carolina is competitive, people will be intrigued to watch what Belichick's doing. But he can't come out and go 3-9. I don't think he will now. Don't get me wrong, but he can't come out and just have a miserable team, because people might watch him early, and then I think I'm going to compare that a little bit. And I may be off base, and if I am, you correct me. I'm going to compare that a little bit to when Deion Sanders went to Colorado. When Colorado got off to that 3-0 start and they were upsetting people, man, you talk about high numbers. But then when they fell off the cliff, and I think they lost their last 6 games, I think their numbers declined greatly. So
yes, they did.
Yeah, so I think the eyeballs on North Carolina will be tied not only to Belichick, but if he can be competitive.
So I want to bring up one more point, and then I want to play one little game with you on this ACC settlement before I let you out of here. But the other point is, if the deal goes down to like 71 million, the exit fee does 2031. That's the same year the Big Ten contract expires.
75 million.
75. Okay, yeah. That's the same year the Big Ten contract is going to be re-upped with the networks.
Yeah.
If the Big Ten and the SEC get into a fight to try to get some schools, I mean, I don't know where you land. I'm kind of bank on the fact that the Big Ten would win out for those schools, wouldn't they?
Well, based on the revenue that's produced, and if that's the reason that you're leaving, I would say yes. Yeah, I think so. Now, the footprint says you should go to the SEC. The footprint indicates that you would have more rivalry games in the SEC. I don't think that's what they're looking at. I think they're looking at bottom line and how much money can we bring in. What's also interesting about this, and I'm going to revisit quickly a point I was making earlier about Florida State and Clemson. You remember when the SEC expanded back in 1992, Bobby Bowden in Florida State didn't want any part of the SEC because he was dominating the ACC. And he's like, why go in there and butt heads against Alabama and Florida and Tennessee and all those other programs? So there is at least, and I know that's 30-some years ago, but there's at least some history of Florida State saying we're better off staying in the ACC than going to the SEC.
Yep. Part of that was bitterness too, though, because throughout the 60s and the 70s, Florida State was begging to join the SEC and never got an offer. And so it kind of went both ways. So I want to play a game. I want to just run through the ACC teams real quick. And let's say hypothetically the ACC implodes, and give me your prediction on where each team would go. Well, we would assume the Big Ten and the SEC get first dibs. If they don't want the team, the Big 12 might take them. So I'll go SEC, Big 10, Big 12, or they're just screwed. One of those options. So I'll start with Florida State since we're with them.
Well, I'm going to say it'll be more attractive for them to go to the Big Ten, and so I'm going to go Big Ten. Here's the other part of that too. Even in their own state, they got to compete with Florida and Miami for recruits, and so joining the SEC is not going to help their recruiting, is it? Maybe joining the Big Ten will. Something new, something different.
All right, I'm going to give you my thoughts on that, but first, Clemson, the two main ones. What about Clemson?
I'm going to say Big Ten for the same reason as Florida State. If you can make millions and millions of dollars more by going to the Big Ten, then I think that, and that's what this is all about, I think they'd go Big Ten.
Okay, so here's my hot take. I think they'll both go to the SEC because I don't think the Big Ten is going to want Florida State and Clemson, because I think the Big Ten is still staying committed to their academic AAU member institution rule.
Okay, well, I thought I was addressing whether or not those schools wanted to go.
No, it's a prediction of where they'll end up, not where they'll want to go, but where they'll end up.
I thought it was where they wanted to go. I'm sorry.
No, it's where do you think they'll end up?
Okay,
that's the question.
Well, I'm gonna still stick to the snobby Big Ten academics.
Oh, okay. All right. So, what about Miami?
I'm gonna say SEC.
Okay. And, wow.
And they have the academics, right?
They do have the academics for the
Big Ten would want. But I'm going to say Miami, and I'm going to give you a silly reason because it contradicts what we're seeing out there right now. Travel. Miami's a whole lot closer to all these SEC schools. Now you can sit there and say, well, wait a minute, Southern Cal and UCLA are in the Big Ten, and they got to go play Rutgers and I get all that. Penn State, that's a lot of travel. But I think that's going to be a part of it. So I'm going to say Miami to the SEC.
All right, I'm going to move up to How about UNC? Do you think Big Ten or SEC will get them?
Big Ten.
Okay, I'm with you on North Carolina to the Big Ten. This is the first one we're in agreement with because I think Miami's going to go to the Big Ten, but I think North Carolina would go to the Big Ten too because of the academics. I also think, and I want to know your thoughts, I think that means Duke is going to go to the Big Ten too, and they certainly have the academics for that.
Yes.
Now, moving up, the two Virginia schools, Virginia and Virginia Tech.
Virginia to the Big Ten, Virginia Tech, SEC.
Totally agree. I think we're in agreement on that. Are there any other schools that could get into the Big Ten or SEC, or the rest of them just screwed? Not counting Notre Dame.
What about Syracuse? So I'd say Big Ten on Syracuse.
I think the Big Ten could theoretically go for Syracuse. That's a natural rivalry for Penn State if they do join.
Mm-hmm.
What about Boston College, sticking with the Northeast? Do you think they have any chance?
Was the third option screwed?
Yes.
Screwed.
Okay, so they're screwed. So the rest of them, Pittsburgh, Louisville, NC State, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, SMU, Stanford, Cal. Are we going screwed for all those schools?
I think Pittsburgh has a chance to get in the Big Ten.
Really? Even though Penn State's already, that market's already there?
Yeah, I do. I think Pitt, because you have some natural rivalries there already, and they won the ACC just a few years ago, right?
They did with Kenny Pickett.
Yes, beat Tennessee that year too, as I recall.
They did.
But I'm going to go. I'm going to go. They've got enough tradition, I think, in football. They've been up and down now. I grant that, but I think they've got enough with their tradition that they would be a fit for the Big Ten. I think they go Big Ten.
Yeah, since Johnny Majors has been hired at Tennessee, Tennessee's record is 1-3 against Pitt all time. They lost twice to them in the 80s when Jackie Sherrill was there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Jimmy, how can we find your work?
Well, right here. And also, the thing that I'm doing that I enjoy a lot is we're doing these rewind segments. You can find it on Full Disclosure Productions. It's on YouTube. If you have any trouble tracking them down, you can go to YouTube and then search for my name. And I think we've done about 18 interviews. The most recent one is Zakai Ziegler. And Caleb, after we launched that one, we've had on Twitter or X, we've had well over 40,000 views on that alone. So, and Ziegler was really good. We'll run part 2 that'll be launched tomorrow. And then we will, we've got Jim Haslam interview, Mr. Jim Haslam. That interview is going to be launched after Zakai Ziegler. So you can find those on, again, Full Disclosure Productions. Go to YouTube. If you have trouble finding it, type in my name and those interviews will show up. So that's, but that's a project that I've enjoyed doing a lot. I love interviewing a lot of these folks, and it's been a lot of fun.
Jimmy, thanks for coming on. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, Caleb. You take care. Have a good day.
You too.